Welcome, welcome, welcome to Wednesday night. Haha. Glad to see all of you here this evening. What's good? Drop a hello down in the comments. Let me know you're here. Man, I tell you, I got some nitro cold brew in my veins. Woo! We're ready to go. We're ready to talk about the Exile tonight. Ready to talk about the Exile. Man, I hope you guys have been enjoying this series. If you haven't been staying with us, no worries. The beauty of these Wednesday live streams is they're up on YouTube, y'all. Go watch them. Come in in any of these episodes and make sure if you missed one, go catch it. You know. Logan spamming hi in the chat. Always appreciate it. Always appreciate it. Most definitely. Hello, Mr. Gunn. Glad you're here with us tonight. So glad you are here with us tonight. Anyone else want to join their voice to this this chorus of highs while my PowerPoint melts down on me while I talk to you? Un momento, por favor. All right. If there aren't any more highs to be had, let's go ahead and jump right into our good old announcements. You know, we always got to get into the good old announcements. So let's take a look at what we got this week. You know, we start off like we always do, talking about GCC Student Ministry weekly update number 26. I'll just show all the screens except for the one that I want to show you. This one's a good one. There's a lot of stuff in this one, so make sure that you're watching. But I tell you, we got a lot of extra stuff coming down the road here pretty quick, so stay tuned for this upcoming week. But this week was special because this week, you know, we've been right into hashtag Bible reading plan through the book of Galatians. It's been a really, really, really interesting couple of days. We've done about 12 days of hashtag Bible reading plan Galatians. So if you haven't taken part of that, well, hopefully you know by now where to go. But if you don't, it's Instagram at GwinnettCC_student_ministry. But here's a little secret, all right? Every single morning at 5 a.m., it goes out to your parents' email. Now, if you want it to go to your email, what I need you to do is send me a message, shoot me a DM, send me a text, throw it in the comments below. Let me know that you would like to receive the hashtag Bible reading plan email. But also, make sure that you all have taken time to watch the 2021 plan on our YouTube channel. It's displayed prominently if you're a subscriber on our YouTube channel, but it is one of our most recent videos. And get this, all right? It talks about everything going on from now until December. Yeah, you should go definitely check that out. And inside the 2021 plan, we talk about something happening this month, and that is Winterfest. Not necessarily in the way that we wanted it to happen, you know. We wanted to be in Gatlinburg this year, of course, but Winterfest is going to happen together in the Youth Center on February 28th. So, if you've been interested in going to Winterfest, which if you've heard tales about our youth group escapades, Logan, I know you certainly have, Briley, you certainly have, you're going to want to make sure that you find yourself in the Youth Center on February 28th for Winterfest together. Don't miss it. All right? All right. So with that being said, that's all of our announcements this week. Pretty simple, pretty short. But if you want to know more, don't ever forget The 2021 plan. That's the best place to find everything that's going on from now until December. All right. So with that being said, let's jump right into our game for tonight. We're playing a game. We're bringing it back. We're getting right back into the games. We're going to come out swinging with a game we like to call Worse or Worser. English isn't exactly applicable here, but hey, let it slide for the sake of fun. Am I right? Okay. Here's the rules for Worse or Worser. It's pretty simple. Which of these two things do you think is worse? You have to tell me which one of these things is worse down in the comments. And of course, if you don't already know, if you're new here, if you got an answer to a question up on the screen and you're putting it in the comments, we only believe in the use of one meat in your sweet comment dish, your sweet comment entree. It's not beef. It's not chicken. No, it's spam. Y'all know what spam is? Let me tell you what spam is. It's typing and never stopping, hitting enter as much as you can. Fill those comments with your answer to each question. Capiche? Drop capiche down in the comments so that way I know you understand the concept of spam. Drop it. Put it. There's a delay in the chat. So no pressure here. No pressure. I want to see some capiches. Some spam. Show me some spam. No spam. Capiche. Good enough. All I got was one. That's all I need. Let's keep going. So here is our first question for which is worse or worster? Awesome. First question. Which is worse? Finding hair in food or inhaling a bug? Finding hair in food or inhaling a bug? Which one's worse? Tell me down in the comments below. Inhaling a bug? You sure about that? Now, here's the thing with inhaling a bug. It's a little bit better than finding hair in food, all right? With it being inhale a bug, I mean, that could be any kind of bug. You know what I'm saying? So that's not, in my mind, that's not as bad. Now, if it was like inhaling a spider, like a black widow spider, I'd be like, no. But if it was like inhaling a little, what's the word? A little ladybug? I don't mind that. All right, the consensus is inhaling a bug, so I guess that's what we decide. Inhaling a bug, much worse than finding hair in food, which we've all done. We've definitely all done, I think. Which is worse? Having a permanent bad haircut or having a permanent splinter under your big toenail? Ooh. Yeah, this one is pretty easy to me, but I'd love to hear you all's opinion. Which is worse, having a permanent splinter under your big toenail or having a permanent bad haircut? Throw it down in the comments. Logan's going red. He thinks it's worse to have a permanent splinter under your big toenail. Big toe from King Supreme Boy, definitely. Both you guys are saying red toenail. You know what? I 1,000%, 1,000,000,000,000% agree. Absolutely. I agree with those spammed comments. Have a permanent splinter under your big toenail. I would not take that any day. Having a permanent bad haircut, it would stink. But I could still function in the world. Yeah, that was pretty easy. Now it's time for our next one. Here we go. Which is worse? Being on the top floor. See, English is not good for this game. Don't worry about that. Being on the top floor of a swaying skyscraper or being in a very tight space in a cave? Which is worse? Throw it down in the comments. And keep spamming so that way I know what your new comments are. Keep spamming, keep spamming, keep spamming. Now, while you guys are figuring that out, I am going to go ahead and do a bit of an English edit here for my own sake, because it would this is kind of driving me crazy. There we go. Just because I was feeling a little, it was just making me feel a little bad. Okay, you guys are saying green. Okay, being on the top floor of a swaying skyscraper. That's worse than being in a very tight space in a cave. All right. I mean, how tight are we talking, though? You know, like, that's the problem. I've seen some of these movies, some of these horror movies. There's one, I can't think of what it's called, but they're like it's not just in a tight, it's not like you're in a small room in a cave. It's like, no, you're talking about a hole that stretches on for miles, all right? And it's only as big as, like, from this arm to this arm, like, it's about as big as your torso and then your two arms. So you can only do this. That's pretty awful, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, I couldn't do that. I could not do that. Okay, you guys are saying green. All right, we'll stick with green, I guess. Which is worse? It's evidently being on the top floor of a swaying skyscraper. All right. I guess I should keep track of y'all's answers. That's actually a pretty good idea. So that's what you guys say. I very much think it's this one, though, just for the record. But this is y'all's answer. All right, moving on. Which is worse? Blue hair or no hair? Blue hair or no hair? Tell me down in the comments. Which is worse? Blue hair. We're talking blue raspberry, neon blue, can see it from a million miles away hair, or no hair? From a tactical point of view, you know, like for my military people out there, for like the people who like you think about if you're going to be in an action movie, right? Definitely wouldn't want blue hair. You know, like you could put a wig on, you can be, you know, like you can blend into your surroundings like you do in video games. Yep. Both of y'all are saying red. I totally agree. I'd go no hair. I could not do blue hair unless I was going to be like a punk rocker, you know? I don't know. You guys might be able to pull it off. You might be surprised at how well you can pull off blue hair. But yeah, I'm with you. I'd do no hair. But hey, you do you. You do you. You want to do blue hair? That's all right. That's all right. I personally would just go bald. Although I've been told that I do not look good bald. My mom took pictures of me when I did soccer, but way back in the day in elementary school. I shaved all my hair off because, you know, during the summer you're running around like a chicken with their head cut off as an elementary school kid playing soccer. You really don't even want any hair on your head because it's just so hot. You're all sweaty and all that stuff, you know. So we shaved it all off, and my mom always said I looked like I was sick whenever I shave all my hair off. Anyways, red it is. So that is our game. I'm going to come back through here real quick and figure out y'all's answers. I'd love to mark these, and we'll come back to it later sometime for something else. And then you guys said inhaling a bug. Yeah, I don't know about that one. I think this one's pretty bad, but I mean, I guess everybody deals with that. Inhaling a bug's a lot more rare. All right, here's y'all's answers. We got inhaling a bug as the one that is worse. We have a permanent splinter under your big toenail as worse than a permanent bad haircut. We have being on the top floor of a swaying skyscraper being worse than being in a very tight cave. Man, I don't know about that one. I would never want that. But, you know, it depends. If the skyscraper's not going anywhere, you know, it'd be fine. But, yeah, if it was shoddily built, I'd be pretty freaked out. And then finally, which is worse, no hair. Wait, oh! I misread that. Which is worse, blue hair, no hair? Oh, did you guys see this? Okay, so the question is, which is worse? You guys think no hair, so you guys are chill with having blue hair, but you'd rather not be bald. Is that right? I mean, if that's what you got, that's what you got. No worries. I'm just letting you know. Just letting you know. Spam yes in the chat if you're chill with that. Spam yes in the chat if you're chill with saying that no hair is worse than blue hair. Yeah, you guys are like, yeah, I'm keeping my hair. I can dye it again. All right, cool. Well, with that being said, it's time for us to transition this evening into a time of prayer. We always spend a couple of minutes making a bit of a list, so that way we can be praying for each other. So if you have anything that's going on in your life, good things, bad things, everything in between, go ahead and drop it down in the comments. Let us know how we can be praying for you. I'm going to go ahead and drop the obligatory ones that Logan always loves to drop, because I guess I'm just that mean. Let's say, there it is. He said it before I could even get it out. There it is. COVID-19, go away. I'm just too slow. You're too fast, Logan, and I'm too slow. Even with the delay, you beat me. I don't know how you did that. COVID-19, go away. And then most definitely, I'll say this for Briley, before she can get a chance to watch this, pray for school. School, I know, for some of you guys, some of you gals, school is kicking your butt. And that's all right. It's all right. You know, sometimes things are just tough. Sometimes things are difficult. Make sure you guys are keeping nose to the grindstone. You know, you guys are quarantined. You guys are in person. You guys are doing just digital. No matter what your situation is, even if you're really, really sick, make sure you're doing what you can to stay on top of all that homework. Stay on top of all those projects, all those essays, whatever's going on, keep up with it. All right? Super, super important. That's something, hopefully, here's my prayer for all this COVID nonsense, all right? My prayer is that you all can, no matter if you're in middle school or high school, that you guys can truly use this as an opportunity to learn how to grow, learn how to learn. Because once you get to college, man, I'm telling you, a lot of the things that you guys are learning the hard way right now, I hope they really pay off for you all in college. And I think they will. I really do. One of the hardest things about college, and I had a few friends that experienced this, is, it's very similar to what you all are experiencing whenever you're quarantined or you have to go to a digital option if you're used to in-person school. If you don't do your work, you don't get a good grade. Simple as that. And it's very easy to not do your work when you're in college because there's all kinds of other stuff, all kinds of other fun stuff and activities to do, and mom and dad aren't there looking over your shoulder. So I highly, 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 highly recommend that you use this as an opportunity to really build the skills and the endurance and the strength to always get your work done. Just get it done. Get it done. Get it out of the way, and you'll be better off in the future if you do decide to go to college. Some of y'all are like, I'm not even going to college. Forget that. More power to you, man. More power to you. But for those of you guys and gals who are going to college, always be thinking, this could be an opportunity to get better for the future. Even if you don't go to college, everybody needs to be learning something at all times. I'm a big fan of that. Everybody needs to be a student. Everybody needs to be a learner of something or someone, So make sure you're finding something to learn, all right? Super, super important. COVID-19, go away. And we got school, COVID-19, anything else going on in y'all's lives you want to talk about? My rant is over. It's the thing I feel like I rant about more than ever now. But it's important. It's important. You guys get that. I think we'll definitely pray for our healthcare workers like we always do. If you guys ever, here's a good PSA as well. While we're waiting for some of you guys to catch up, while we're waiting for me to catch up with the chat and all that extra stuff. If you guys ever have a prayer request, you ever have something going on in your life that you want to talk about with me, I'm always a text away. I'm always a call away. So don't just feel like you have to do it now, like this is the only time to do it. Or if you're watching this later on, like if you feel like you missed the opportunity, it's not true. You could text me right now while you're rewatching this another time. Hello, people from the future. Hope it's fun. Hope it's nice. Hope the sun is shining today. Or if it's rainy, I hope you're enjoying a good book inside. Whatever. Whatever's going on, I hope that you feel like you can always reach out to me no matter what. All right. That being said, let's go ahead and We're going to come back to this prayer request list at the end, but let's go ahead and jump right into our Exile series. So let's get right into it. The Exile. We've been going through this for the past couple of days. I don't know what my screen looked like because it was all catching up. But we've been going through this series that we're calling the Exile. And the interesting thing about the Exile, and we say this every week, but it's important to remember one more time, is the Exile is one of the most important things in the Bible that we never talk about for many different reasons. But it's a very difficult thing to talk about. It's got a lot of emotion attached to it. I think last week that became pretty clear. Is the Exile isn't like other biblical studies. It's a hard thing to study, not just because it's got things that are hard to understand, but because there's really strong, raw emotions that are talked about when you're reading some of the passages that have to do with the biblical exile. So in our study of the Exile, we've been talking about how this changed to this. And that transition is something we're going to cover most especially tonight. This picture in particular, we're gonna spend some time talking about the scripture that inspired this picture. And if you stayed with us during our Psalms series, which was way back in the summer, it was a long time ago. It was our first live stream that we ever did. You're familiar with the passage that we're going to be talking about. Hey, Briley, no worries. You're not late. You're not late. No worries. It's hard to be late to a live stream, in my opinion. But we've been talking all about the Exile. And we've been talking about the emotions attached to it. That's the main thing, is the emotions attached to the Exile. So we talked about the people of Israel, about what led them to this place. And but most specifically, we've been talking about a lot of the prophets who dealt with these things head on. And last week we talked about Lamentations, and Lamentations is a book of biblical poetry written by the prophet Jeremiah. That's the guy who's up on the screen right now. And he, to put it very basic terms, was very much in his feels about the exile, because he was experiencing it firsthand. He tried to prophesy to these kings. And what happened when a prophet tried to prophesy to the kings about the doom and gloom of Israel? They would ignore it and just keep on doing their own thing most of the time, right? And so that repetitive process of trying to get the kings to change their ways was really, really, really difficult and not fun at all. And so last week we talked about Jeremiah's reflection on the fact that it's still not changing and it's still not getting better. And really, we kind of came down to the conclusion that Lamentations is all about the first word. And that first word in the book of Lamentations is how. How. And that question of how, we really kind of figured out that truly is what lament is. Asking the question how is at its heart, at its essence. That's what lament is. And we're going to get even deeper into this concept of lament tonight. But usually, lament is biblical poetry. And what is biblical poetry? Well, we talked about this last week as well. Biblical poetry is well, it's not explaining. It may sometimes feel as though it's trying to explain something to us, but that's really not what biblical poetry is trying to achieve with that certain type of genre. You might think it's reporting something, like it's reporting the news, like it's like an anchor, live on the scene. Here's what happened. It's really not doing that either, though. And then you might think it's just telling you something, like it's just trying to convince you of something, but it's not trying to do that either. Biblical poetry truly is a genre within the Bible that is all about the expression of emotion. But it's not just emotion for emotion's sake. It's a spiritual emotion. It's trying to talk about the spiritual aspects of our emotions. And so when we're talking about biblical poetry, we're talking about this section of the Bible that we really haven't really touched in this series so far. We have our look at the Bible right here. We got the Old Testament and New Testament, and the poetry sits right there in the middle in the purple. And we'll get to that in just a little bit. But I always like to start off just by letting you all take a quick spin through the biblical story as far as the Old Testament is concerned. And tonight, we will have covered every single little part of the Old Testament at some point during the Exile series as of tonight, which is really cool. Give yourself a pat on the back. You've read a part of the Old Testament from every single major section. That's good stuff, all right? So, let's jump in. What we start with, we always start with the law. I still don't have Genesis up there for some reason. When I made this graphic, I don't know why I didn't include Genesis. Don't worry about it. First 5 books of the Bible, known as the law: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And all those are talking about law language. It's like setting a foundation, a groundwork for everything else in the Bible. Then after that, you got this weird section. Again, it doesn't really apply to the Exile series, so it might, but we'll address that later. But it's weird. That's all you need to know. But then we got this section of 2 books, 1st and 2nd Samuel, and all that has to do with King David. Now, King David was a big deal, and we've said that once or twice as well. But it's important to remember King David was a big deal. So there's a whole section of this part of the Old Testament, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 2 whole books that are devoted to King David. And a little bit of setup and a little bit of after, but that's beside the point, right? And then after that, we move into this section of 1st and 2nd Chronicles, and also 1st and 2nd Kings. And both of those are the same type of story, similar to like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are the same type of story. But they kind of have these two different tellings of the history of Israel, and then Ezra and Nehemiah come right after that, even though once again, Ezra and Nehemiah actually belong like all the way down over here, right? Like all the way, all the way at the end, they belong over there. But they show up right here for some reason. Biblical canon, it's weird. It's a conversation for another time, and we'll get to it maybe one of these days. If you want to know more, let me know. But then we get to the section that we've really been covering over the past couple of weeks, and that's right in here. And it's a little section known as the prophets. And it always starts out with Isaiah, the longest section, or the longest book of the entire section, Isaiah. And the prophets are a strange breed of biblical books. And you do see, certain aspects of biblical prophecy throughout the Bible, just like you see certain aspects of biblical poetry throughout the Bible. You see certain law codes throughout the Bible. So it's not like what I don't want you all to do is to look at these slides right here that we've been looking at for quite a few weeks and think to yourself, oh, well, the only part of prophecy happens in here, or poetry happens just here, or history happens just here, or law happens just here. That's not really the case. Like, not at all. It all kind of dances around, and like it talks to itself, and it's all over the place. And side note, to get super nerdy, there is a really, really cool graphic that someone made. Someone actually took the time to chart every single time that the Bible talks about itself. Super, super cool. If you want to see that, let me know. I got the hookup on that. But actually, when we're talking about the biblical exile, let's get super simple. We've used a lot of different visuals. We've used a lot of different ways of talking about this, but let's get super, super basic and simple tonight. All right? The main story of the exile, the main story of the Old Testament, a large portion of the Old Testament, is simply this. All right? Here we go. The kings made bad decisions. There were a lot of kings up there on that timeline we've been looking at over the past few weeks, but it starts with them making consistent bad decisions over the course of like 300 to 400 years. It's a long time. A lot of generations go by of kings making terrible decisions. And then you got number 2. Again, these things are happening at the same time. The prophets during that time tried warning the people of Israel and Judah after they divided, but that's a different point. The prophets tried warning people, hey, this is not good. All right? Like, we got to change this. Like, we're not going in a good place. Like this is getting out of control. This sin problem that we have. You guys really need to make better choices. And then they didn't. And we get to number 3, where everyone was exiled. At its most basic, okay? At its most basic, that's the story of the exile. Kings make bad decisions, prophets try warning them, and everyone goes into exile. All right? So, I think it might be helpful for us to actually kind of like chart this out, like chart our videos so far, our live streams so far onto the timeline, okay? Because I actually kind of did a few things out of order. So let's throw that up and see what that looks like, all right? So we have our timeline up here at the top. We've been using just a whole bunch throughout this entire series. We've got our intro right in here. How did we end up here? And we're basically we talked a lot about, what is the exile? Why does it matter? Why should we even bother studying this? That was kind of the main focus of that. And then we moved from there on into Isaiah. I don't know why the H is down here, but don't worry about that. We moved on from there on into Isaiah, and Isaiah dealt with this section of the history of Israel right in here. And we moved from there on into talking about the kings, specifically Josiah. That's who we really focused on. He did the reforming period. And then we moved from the kings on into Jeremiah, who was the prophet in Judah, one of the many prophets in Judah, right towards the end of the time, right before they go into Babylonian captivity. All right. And then we focused on Lamentations, which happens after Babylonian captivity. But tonight, I want us to move even past all that. I want us to move on into talking about, where we are now. This is our class tonight. This is the thumbnail, like you probably know. But for us to keep continuing on, it's important for you all to realize that things are not the same as they once were. The conversation about the exile shifts to a much darker tone. I know you're like, can that happen? Yes, it can. It gets darker from here because the conversation so far, for the most part, I know that the tail end of Isaiah, it talked about not being in Jerusalem. Lamentations talked all about not being in Jerusalem. Even the end of Jeremiah talked about that a little bit, and of course, the last chapter of 2 Kings and the last chapter of 2 Chronicles. So we've alluded to it a lot. But tonight, we find ourselves firmly planted in Babylon. We're in Babylon now. And because we are in Babylon now, it's important to realize that things are never going to be the same. Things are only going to continue to get darker and darker and darker as we focus in on this. And it is going somewhere good. And that is the beauty of the Bible, is that it has these stories that are so dark and so scary and so just out there. But it always is going somewhere good. But before we get to that somewhere good, we have to fully explore the dark. All right? You guys are strong enough to do this. You guys are smart enough to do this. You guys are old enough to do this. I fully believe in you. So we can do this together. But we have to fully acknowledge the fact that we are in Babylon now. And things are not good. So with that being said, on that cheery note, let's talk about the section of the Bible we're going to be talking about tonight. We're going to be in the works of wisdom. I didn't mean to draw the line there. We're going to be in the works of wisdom tonight. We're going to be talking all about the book of Psalms. Now, the interesting thing about Psalms, and it's good that we've already talked about this, is Psalms is biblical poetry. And as you remember probably from just a little while ago, biblical poetry is not like other parts of the Bible. So when we read biblical poetry, we have to have our biblical poetry glasses on. You know? In fact, I think it's even pretty good for us to go back and just talk about this one more time. Biblical poetry is not trying to explain something. It's not trying to report something. It's not trying to tell you something. It is trying to express emotions. Lay them at the feet of the Lord so that transformation can happen. And with that in mind, we are about to talk about one of the darkest passages in the Bible. And we've actually already talked about it on the live stream. So if this is not your first rodeo, you're already used to this conversation. We're going to be talking about Psalm 137. This is I wouldn't necessarily call it one of my favorite psalms, but I definitely find it one of the most intriguing, one of the most one of the things that really draws me in to how great the Bible is, because the Bible's not afraid to be real. It's not afraid to go there. It's not afraid to talk about things. And this certainly is one of those passages in Scripture that talks about stuff and goes there and is real and is hard. And we're going to talk about it tonight. But before we get there, it's important to remember this conversation that we had earlier about lament. Now, lament is talked about a lot in our culture. Lament is talked about a lot in church. And lament means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But an interesting thing that's really important to remember is that often lament is the language of people without a home. Now, what do I mean by this? Now, this can be a literal home. This can be a spiritual home. But in our current world, look around and find some of these people who don't have a physical home that they feel comfortable calling their own. Refugees, immigrants, people who have fled violence, who have fled really terrible situations. When they do this, they turn to lament because things are not as they should be. Not all the time. That's why I said often it is the language of people without a home. But what makes a migrant or a refugee, a political refugee, or a fleeing refugee different than an exiled person is choice. And this is what makes the exile in the Bible so painful. This is what makes exiles throughout history painful. Ironically, the same group of people in the 1930s and 40s in Nazi Germany, the Jewish people were forced out of their homes and put into concentration camps in Poland and in Germany and in lots of different Eastern European countries, and that's different, isn't it? than when a person willingly says, I don't like what's happening in my country, so I'm going to go live someplace else. Choice plays a really big role in the level of pain that a person experiences when they turn to something that we refer to as lament. Now, lament is something that all of us at some point in our lives, I believe, you have experienced this before. Lament is an aching, a longing, a realization that things are not as they are supposed to be. And it's incredibly sad. It's crushing. It's sometimes it's defeating. Sometimes it's depressing. But it's important. Because those feelings happen to us. Most of the times, no one seeks out those feelings. I mean, some people do seek out those feelings. You know, they seek out the feeling of wanting to be sad. That happens, right? But most of the time, life is just difficult. Bad things happen, even to the best of people. And when they do, the language of lament helps them move forward. So this is the setup for one of the scariest Bible passages that you'll ever read. So that being said, let's turn the page and let's get in Psalm chapter 137. Psalm 137 verses 1 through 3. By the rivers of Babylon we sat and wept when we remembered Zion. I'm going to stop at every verse because each one of these is action-packed. By the rivers of Babylon. So that puts us right on the shore. Right after the exile. Or if not right after, a few years after the exile. Because these people have a memory of Zion, the holy city, Jerusalem. They have a memory of that. And they are weeping because they are not there. Verse 2, there on the poplars we hung our harps. Why? Verse 3, for there our captors asked us for songs. Our tormented demanded songs of joy. They said, sing us one of the songs of Zion. Now, an interesting thing about this part in particular is this is not a nice thing to say. Why? Because what is a song of Zion? Well, a lot of people would refer to this as a victory song. I'm not even going to try to write with the pen I started to. A lot of people would refer to this as a victory song. Well, what happened to Zion? Was it victorious over its foes when Babylon came and busted down the walls and busted through the doors? No, it wasn't. So this is the captors of a person. This is a person in Israel describing their experience while their captors are literally poking fun and pointing fingers and laughing at them saying, haha, yeah, sing us one of your victory songs because we beat you. You are defeated. And it's not just you that's defeated. No, this right here is also saying we didn't just beat you, we beat your God. Your God has been beaten. And the sad thing is the psalmist has no rebuttal, and that's why they're frustrated. Verse 4, how can we sing the songs of the Lord while in a foreign land? See, there's such a respect here still. The songs of how could we even begin to do that while in a foreign land? There's a respect here. There's a great respect here for Yahweh God still. If I forget you, Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its skill. So we have an if statement coming right into an action. So if I forget you, Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its skill. And then if I do not remember you, it kind of reverses here. May my tongue cling to the roof of my mouth. If I do not consider Jerusalem my highest joy. And this one has to do with all of them so far. All of them. This is some strong language. And it's really kind of it's the psalmist themselves. It's the writer of the song, because this is just a song. Remember, if this is since this is in our book that's called the Psalms. Psalm is just another word for song. So this is a song that would have been sung, a sad song, a lament song, an angry song. Why do I say angry? Well, let's keep reading. Psalm 137, verse 7. Remember, Lord, what the Edomites did on the day Jerusalem fell. You're asking God to remember that the Edomites did something terrible? They destroyed Jerusalem? You want them to remember that? They cried, tear it down to its foundations. This is awful. This is just awful. This is not something you would want God to remember. That's not something you would want God to remember. So why are they saying this? Why? Well, they're angry. And then we get talking about Babylon. So we talked about Edom getting wiped off the face of the earth. Now it's Babylon's turn. And this is where things get nasty. Daughter Babylon, doomed to destruction. Happy is the one who repays you according to what you have done to us. What did they do? They destroyed the city. They totally wiped it off the face of the earth. Happy is the one who seizes your infants, and then get this, dashes them against the rocks. This is a passage of the Bible that just said that because this other country destroyed our city, their infant children should die. Whew! So needless to say, this is a very, very difficult part of the passage to read. But why are we reading it? Why are we talking about it tonight? Just like we started when we started talking about biblical poetry. Biblical poetry is an expression of emotion, even if that emotion is not good. It's not here to try to tell you how to deal with your emotions. It's not here to report what happened and tell you a story. It's not even here to explain what happened, because the writer of Psalm 137 doesn't understand why this took place. Like, it still doesn't really make sense to them why God let this happen to them. I mean, at this point, if you've been following the Exile series this long, you're like, well, they should. And they should. They should know. But it also doesn't seem fair to them. So they're expressing this emotion, bad as it is, as they sit by the rivers of Babylon. They sit in a place that is not their home, frustrated, angry that this happened, because it doesn't seem fair. It doesn't seem right. These were real people with families, with children that were enslaved to another group of people. As problematic as it is, as frustrating as it is, Psalm 137 expresses the real emotion of having to make sense of a world that doesn't make sense. And this has real world implications for us as Christians today. We have emotions. We are humans. We're not robots. Even if we wanted to be, we couldn't be. And sometimes there's parts of us that are not good. Sometimes there's parts of us that need to be redeemed and changed. And even at our most angry moments, somehow that it's hard to say that it's helpful, but sometimes it is. in a really strange way. Like I said earlier, this was going to get really dark tonight. But it gets this dark in order for us to be able to talk about that which all of you have been waiting on pins and needles for, and I as well have been waiting on pins and needles for, and that is the hope that is found at the end of the exile, when Israel finally comes out of exile and is truly able to thrive in the kingdom of God, seen most clearly in Jesus Christ. And so tonight, we begin a really, really great bridge into the conversation of talking about how even in the darkest of books, like the Psalms, like Isaiah, like Jeremiah, there's still a light at the end of the tunnel. There's still a flicker of goodness, of God's goodness breaking through even in these passages. So with that being said, I want us to watch this short video from the Bible Project. I believe we've already watched this before, but this will make even more sense now that we've really done some of the groundwork of talking about the exile. So with that being said, let's jump right in.
There's something about being home, where everything's just right. We're surrounded by people we love and trust. There's a feeling of stability and safety.
And while some people get to experience this kind of home, many do not. Others might even be forced to leave their home and go live in a foreign land. We call this going into exile.
Yeah, in exile, everything is disoriented. You're in the unknown.
And in the story of the Bible, this is where the ancient Israelites found themselves, conquered by Babylon, living in exile, far from their homeland.
And so they had to ask themselves, how did we end up here? And is there any hope of going home?
And the whole story of the Bible is designed to address those very questions.
The whole story? Really?
Yeah, go back to the first pages of the Bible. Where does humanity live?
Okay, they live in this really sweet garden. They're home.
And they're there on one condition, that they trust and follow God's one command, and they don't. And so the consequence is banishment from the garden.
They're sent into exile.
Exactly. And so this story has been designed to set you up for Israel's story, how they were given the gift of the promised land and were able to stay there on one condition, that they be faithful to the terms of their covenant relationship with God.
They didn't, and they were sent into exile.
And if you still don't see the parallel between exile from the garden and exile from Israel, think about this. In Genesis, humanity's exile led up to the story about the building of what city?
Oh yeah, Babylon. The same place the Israelites are sent.
But that's not the end of either story. In the first Babylon, God called Abraham to leave and travel to the promised land. And that story was designed to give hope to the Israelites currently living in the later Babylon.
Now eventually, they do get to leave and travel back to their promised homeland.
And when they did, it wasn't home sweet home. Oppressive empires were still ruling over them, and the people kept acting in the same corrupt ways as their ancestors. And so the biblical prophets said that exile wasn't actually over.
How could they think they were still in exile when they're at home?
Yeah, this is really important. In the Hebrew scriptures, Israel's Babylonian exile became an image of something more universal. It's that feeling of alienation and longing for something more, no matter where you live.
Yeah,
I just realized I was muted. This image that they have here is really great, and I'll pause here and hang here for just a quick second. But this concept of exile, as you're probably able to tell at this point, since they've kind of unpacked Genesis 1 through 3 and kind of connected it, or really 1 through 11, it's a concept that goes deeper than simply a historical event that happened to the people of Israel. And I hope that's become clearer and clearer and clearer. And it will only become more clear as we begin this dovetail into a conversation about Jesus and as this video unfolds. But this is why it's important for us to study the exile. because all of us have experienced this longing, this lament feeling this year. This year, I believe, really kind of sparked a lot of lament in a lot of different people, regardless of if they wanted it or not. And so that's another really important reason as to why we are talking about what we are talking about.
I can relate to this. I have a great home, but it's situated in a world scarred with pain and broken relationships, death, and tragedy, done by others, but also done by me.
And so in the Bible, exile is the human condition. We all keep repeating this pattern of human corruption leading to a Babylon that we can't escape. And it doesn't matter where you live, we are all longing for a better home.
Now, Israel's scriptures held out hope that one day God would send a king who would rescue the world from all of the Babylons we've created.
And after many generations pass, we meet this Israelite named Jesus of Nazareth. He wandered about with no home, announcing the great restoration, that reality of home that Israel and all humanity has been looking for.
Yeah, Jesus really cared about people who didn't have homes. He welcomed in the stranger. He said God's love is shown when you invite in the outcast and throw parties for people who don't have a place to belong.
Jesus also claimed that Israel and all humanity had lost its way, that our self-centeredness drives us to create false homes based on status and power, and these inevitably exclude others. We live in an exile of our own making. But Jesus said the true way home is one of weakness, of service, and of forgiveness. And then Jesus went into exile alongside us to show us the true way home.
Which is?
Well, Jesus said he is the way. His life and self-giving love proved more powerful than humanity's failure. He opened up a pathway to our real home. And as Jesus' followers committed themselves to him, they discovered this new way of being human. They believed that the real return from exile had begun. And so they would call themselves sojourners or wanderers.
Oh, right. They would say things like, the world isn't our home, and we're citizens of heaven.
And so Jesus' followers remain exiles as they wait for that day when Jesus returns to transform this world into a true home. Hey there.
Hey there. So that's how the part of the way that the exile connects directly to us as followers of Jesus. And I mean, if anything, understanding this biblical history is just good nerdy Bible fun, but it's so much more than that. It draws us deeper into an understanding of the importance of why Jesus came, who Jesus is, and why we should care. Because it's not just release from a historical event. It's a release from the human brokenness that is so prevalent all around us. And so I'm very proud to say that next week we make a transition away from this dark, cloudy place that all of us have been sitting in throughout this entire series. And we finally, this next week, make a transition towards hope. It is off in the distance. It is a speck on the horizon. Isaiah 40, we kick it off, y'all, talking all about the importance of hope. So I hope that you join us next week. With that all being said, let's go to God in prayer. And I appreciate you all for hanging out with me tonight. So let's go ahead and go to God in prayer. Heavenly Father, we're so grateful and so thankful that you are mindful of us, that you see us, that you hear us, that despite even our biggest insecurities and despite our biggest worries, despite all of the threats upon our safety or upon our good health, upon our prosperity, that you are still God, that you still move even during the most terrifying of problems or the most terrifying of events that happen in our world. Lord, I ask that you continue to make yourself known to myself and to these students and to their parents and their families and to our GCC family and our Christian family around the world. Lord, continue to reveal yourself to all of us so that way we can't miss you for one more moment in our times of exile. Lord, keep us honest, keep us real, keep us authentic. Let us always lament loudly and honestly, just like the psalmist did in Psalm 137, Lord. But I ask also that you lead us to hope, you lead us to peace, you lead us to wisdom that is always coming. Because just like the Easter event, no matter how dark Friday gets, no matter how hopeless Saturday gets, Sunday is a-coming. Sunday is a-coming. Come, Lord Jesus. Lord, we love you. We love our son. We love your son, Jesus, and it's in his holy name that we pray. Amen. All right, you all. As always, I'm a phone call, text, carrier pigeon away. I will see you next week. This is Titus saying see you later.